Welcome to SawTown Tavern and welcome to another episode of Hunkered Vegans. We're still hunkered, so we're still cooking. I've been thinking a lot today about my personal philosophy of food and the way that my cooking has evolved over time. So the recipe I'm going to share with you is my spaghetti sauce. I'm going to share the entire recipe with you. It's the way that I will make it here at SawTown. If we are blessed enough to open and provide you with a menu. But over time, I've evolved the recipe to exclude the meat. And the recipe, the way that we're going to cook it today, we're also going to exclude all added fat. So we're not going to even start with olive oil. Because this can be a whole food, plant-based spaghetti sauce that you can use on anything. You can add whole wheat pasta to increase the nutritional value. You could use zucchini noodles. You know, this is a good, solid marinara sauce that you can use in all of your applications. The stove does most of the work. These are the ingredients that I've evolved. I don't like a sweet sauce. I like a little bit of heat in my sauce, some good spice. And you know, I will tell you, I found this recipe I think back in 2007, and it was actually in the New York Times, and it was a fascinating article about the Zappa family spaghetti sauce and how it had evolved. It included a recipe for meatballs. And that was the sauce I started with. I started using that recipe to the letter. I made a couple of tweaks over time for the way that I liked to finish the sauce and what I was going for. And then when I stopped cooking with meat and I stopped putting beef and pork in the recipe, I made a couple more adjustments to make up for that. So I'm really happy with the finished product. We enjoy it. Everyone who has it has really enjoyed it, has not missed the meat, according to them. So that's what we're going to make today. It is certainly a traditional recipe for me, one that I could probably make in my sleep, but one I'm really proud to share with you. So I was watching a new documentary today about some really fascinating science. It's called The Need to Grow. Right now you can find the documentary for free. It's really worth watching, well worth the time. Really talks about the science behind replenishing our soil and kind of closed energy systems, and it was really, really fascinating and actually gave me some hope for the future in terms of the environmental impact of our current food system, in terms of, you know, solving the problems of global warming, particularly where food production is concerned, and getting better nutrition. And as I've said before, I started on the path to a plant-based diet because of my health. The biggest impact has been eliminating all dairy. Wherever you are in terms of eating, I'd like to meet you there. One of the things that is most important to me as a human is to not do any food shaming. I grew up around it. I've grown up with women who were larger, who dealt with the way that society told them to behave and to eat and to just pummel their bodies with diet. And I've taken on a lot of that myself over time. And food shaming is not the way to go here. And I'm not shaming you for what you eat, for what your patterns of eating are. I'm trying to share what I've learned to make food delicious, because that is so important to me. I'm trying to share how I've evolved the food traditions in my own life to make them more plant-based, more nutritious, more approachable, and actually less expensive to recreate. And I'm trying to share, one of the things I think that I should be doing with my time right now. So thanks for listening. We're going to head into the kitchen and we're going to make spaghetti sauce. Okay, so I like to get everything ready and prepared for when I start building the sauce. We're going to do a double batch. A single batch of this sauce would be one large can, 28, 29 ounce of crushed tomatoes. One large or two medium cans of tomato sauce. So either this size or get two of the little 14 ounce guys, and one can of tomato paste. To that we add a quart of water. That's a single batch. We're gonna double that batch. Before we add the tomatoes, we're gonna start with our onion. This is the part where we're gonna make this a whole food plant-based sauce. So instead of using olive oil, and let me tell you, when I first started building this sauce, it started with browning pork and browning beef in the oil, and then the onions, and building from there. Since we don't do that, and we're not using oil right now, we're gonna use a little tomato juice. You could use vegetable stock. You could use red wine. You could use white wine. You could use water. You can use anything you want to soften the onions and start building the sauce. We're going to use a little tomato juice. That nice and warm. And we're going to drop our onions. So this is normally about 1.5 cups per batch, so we want about 3 cups of onions in this, which is 2 to 3 medium onions. I used 3. We're just going to get our onions going with that. And the juice is just going to keep them from sticking and let them start to release their own juice into our sauce. I'm going to put a pinch of salt to help them sweat it out. We're going to let that go for about 4 or 5 minutes. We're getting some great smell, good translucence, a little bit of browning with the onion. So we're going to throw our garlic in now and just let that go a little bit. I've got 2 tablespoons of chopped garlic. If you're using raw and you've chopped it yourself, good for you. And you'll give it a little bit more time than I'm going to give this. You don't want to give it a lot of time because you do not want it to burn and get bitter. I'm going to throw my spices in now. So a single batch would be a tablespoon of dried basil, a teaspoon of dried oregano, about 1/4 teaspoon of crushed red pepper, a teaspoon of kosher salt, and 2 bay leaves. I've just doubled that. I'm going to let our spices, right away you can smell them. As soon as they hit the heat, you can start to smell your spices open up. Now we're going to throw we still do have a little bit of deglazing to do on this pot, even though we haven't used meat or fat. We're going to do that by throwing in our tomato paste. Tomato paste. Cut off one end, and then we open the other end and shove it through. So we empty the can. There's one. We're going to do 2 cans of tomato paste because we're doing a double batch. We're just going to do the same thing, and we're going to let this hurry up and clean this pan. And we're going to start to build our sauce. Turn this down a little bit while we add our tomatoes. As I said, we're going to double everything. So we've got the equivalent of 2 large cans of tomato sauce and 2 large cans of crushed tomatoes. I'm gonna throw those in here and then we'll go get our water. Okay, we have emptied all of our canned tomatoes in here and we've added 2 quarts of water, and we use some of that water to rinse the tomato cans, just like Nanny would, so that we don't waste any of the goodness. And to this, we're gonna add pepperoncini, pickled pepperoncini. Normally it's 2 large, 3 or 4 small. I've got about 5 medium, and we split the difference. Now, I don't add sugar. This would only get a teaspoon or so of sugar. I don't like a sweet sauce, as I said. A little bit goes a long way. But we, as with everything else, or many things, sweeten with maple syrup. So I put about 2 teaspoons of maple syrup to a 1/4 cup of our liquid aminos. Bragg's liquid aminos. Again, that's that all-purpose seasoning that gives us some nice meaty flavor. And we're gonna stir that right down in there. I always use about a whole roasted pepper chopped up for 1 batch. So this is 2 fire roasted peppers chopped up. They're going to dissolve in the sauce. They're going to impart a lot of nice flavor and a little bit of sweetness too. We're going to let this go. It's going to cook down. We're going to let the water cook down. And the flavors meld together. It doesn't take as long. This doesn't have to be a 3-hour sauce, although it can be. But usually I give it about an hour and check it, sometimes an hour and a half. So it is a slower sauce. It's not an immediate sauce, though it could be if you used a lot less water with the tomatoes. But again, I've adapted my slow sauce to our plant-based diet. So we're gonna let this go and we're gonna check it in just about an hour. So we've got a pot of water started for our pasta, for our dinner. But what I do is finish the sauce, and I'm gonna tell you, each pot of sauce is a little bit different. It depends on the acidity of the tomatoes, the brand you use, where you are. I'm still going to let this cook down a little bit, but it's been an hour. The sauce is thickening, the flavor is really developing, and there's a couple things that we're going to do. Now, if you have fresh parsley, this is when I add about 2 tablespoons per batch. I have a little fresh parsley left. Dried is also okay, and you can put that in at the beginning, but it's one of the things I finish the sauce with. Now, I used to also finish it with some Parmesan. We don't use cheese anymore. Now, while I serve our Parmesan, which we made in our first episode of Hunkered Vegans, which is a combination of ground cashew, nutritional yeast, garlic, and salt, to finish the sauce, I use the nutritional yeast. So I would do about 2 tablespoons. It's going to mellow this out nicely, add a nice cheesy flavor. It will almost be like we had cooked it with a Parmesan rind. So I'm going to use a 1/4 cup because this is a double batch of nutritional yeast. We're going to stir that in. Now, the other thing I check it for, I always finish my sauce with a little red wine vinegar, but that also depends on the acidity of the tomatoes. I check it. You always want to adjust your acid first before you add any more salt. Again, for this big pot of sauce, we only use 2 teaspoons. And right now it feels salty enough to me. So we're going to stir in the nutritional yeast, and I'm just going to use 2 teaspoons of red wine vinegar just to finish that off. Now I'm going to let this simmer for about 5 minutes. Check it one more time for flavor, and it's going to be ready to eat. Okay, we're going to do 2 things now. We're going to take a little pasta water out of here. I've cooked a pound of rigatoni for our dinner tonight. And I'm going to drain this because it's ready. Now, We tested our sauce. I pulled out the bay leaves and the pepperoncini, so the sauce is done and ready, except I took a good fistful of Italian parsley and chopped it up, and that's how I finished the sauce. Just in the last moments, it brightens it, it freshens it. And the thing about parsley is, when you bring it home and you wash it off, if you put it in a container of water for the roots, in the refrigerator, it keeps indefinitely, and you'll have fresh parsley pretty much until you're done using it, as long as you keep the water full. And that's it. So the sauce is done. Now, I never serve a pasta that I haven't dressed. So what do I mean by that? I mean, we're going to take a pan, heat it on the stove, with our sauce. Now here's what I want you to know. This is my Sunday sauce. This is my slow simmered sauce. Sometimes I use a quick fresh marinara, sometimes it's fresh tomatoes, sometimes, I use a bunch of different ones, but this is my Sunday sauce. This is what I'm gonna serve it with meatballs, or I'm gonna serve it with our version of chicken parm or anything like that. This is the sauce that I use. It's a slow simmered sauce. Sunday gravy if you want. That's not an argument I'm gonna have. I don't know an Italian who calls it gravy, but a lot of Italian Americans do. So the rigatoni is cooked al dente. So it's got a little more time left on it, and we're just gonna toss it with the sauce, and a little of the pasta water, as much as we need, just to marry this sauce with the pasta. And that is how you finish your pasta to serve. You want the sauce to get in there, you want it to flavor your pasta. And again, the starch water. Helps us to do that. And then we'll also serve a little sauce on the side as well. This is ready for dinner. So as I said, this is my Sunday sauce. We're just having it with some pasta. I made some rigatoni, dressed the pasta, put a little extra sauce on top. For us, it's perfect. It's a great sauce with any meat substitute. Meat if you're eating it. You can dress it with Parmesan, but honestly, the sauce is complete as it is. It's delicious, it's healthy, and it's whole food plant-based. If you want to put this over whole wheat pasta, or you want to put this over polenta, or you want to put this over zucchini noodles. Either way, I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching.